Hi guys, I'm really sorry I'm not there again today. I was planning on being there because I got back from my trip yesterday. But as you can probably hear from my voice, I am not feeling well. So I'm going to rest up today and hopefully I'll be feeling better tomorrow. So I'm going to make this pretty quick. I am going to do the warm up and the notes with y'all, and then you'll have your slides again today. So let's get started with the Wednesday warm-up. The list shows the growth in centimeters of 12 plants during 1 week. Which box plot best displays a summary of these data? You can pause this for a minute or two while everybody solves the problem. Alright, so one thing I noticed that's nice is that the numbers are already put in order for you. So if I just take a quick glance, I could see the minimum is 6 and the maximum is 14. If I look through all the choices, they all go from 6 to 14. Okay, so I got to keep looking. Next thing I'm going to do is find the median. So if I cross off the outside numbers until I reach the middle, you'll see that both 8 and 9 are in the middle of the data. So you got to think what's directly in between 8 and 9. That would be 8.5 for the median. If you look at A, that's not right. The median's 9. B, that could be right. The median's 8.5. C, yep, could be it. Median's 8.5. And D, nope, because that has a median of 9. So right now it's between B and C. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is find Q1. So that's the median of the lower half. So if I look at the lower half of the data and I go right in the middle, it's going to be between 7 and 8. So that would be 7.5. If I look at B, that does not match because B says Q1 is 8. So the answer would have to be C. You could see Q1 is lined up with 7.5. Alright, so have your notes out in front of you. Make sure you have a pencil. We're going to go through dot plots, which is pretty simple. You might have seen these in elementary school before. Sometimes they're made, instead of dots on the number line, sometimes they have X's. Those are called line plots, but they're pretty much the same thing. So, a dot plot is a visual display of data using a number line and dots to represent each data point. The mode of the data is always the value with the tallest stack of dots. Alright, so let's try to make a dot plot. It says plot the following data set on the dot plot. And I crossed, ooh, my bad. I crossed off each number as I went, just so I didn't accidentally miss any numbers or repeat any numbers. So take a minute and put a dot for each number. Also, you can see I labeled the number line from 7 to 16. You could count by 2s, 3s, whatever you want, but this one it just made sense to count by 1s because that would fit all of the numbers. Alright, so when you're ready to move on, you can check your dot plot with mine. This is what mine's looking like. Got 3 on 7, 1 on 8, 2 on 9, 3 on 10, and 1 all the way on 16. So that brings us to a new vocabulary word, which is outlier. So an outlier is a data point that is much lower or much higher than the others. What is the outlier in this data set? Yes, it is 16. So there's not really like a specific distance that it has to be apart from the rest of the numbers. It's just you gotta just kind of eyeball it. Like if you see all the data clustered together except for one, then you would consider that an outlier. Alright, moving on to the next part of the notes. Spread. The variability in the data points describes how far apart the data is from one another. This can also be represented by the range. So spread is like another word for range. It's just showing how spread apart the numbers are from the minimum to the maximum. Next word is center. The median and the mean both represent the center of the data. So usually the median and mean are pretty close to one another. However, sometimes your data is going to be skewed. So we're going to look at different shapes of data below. We'll fill in these two blanks before we look at the shapes. So when the data is skewed, which means when it's pushed off to one side, then the median is the best representation of the data. Because if your data is skewed, that means the mean will be a little bit messed up. The mean will either be too high or too low. So the median is a good, reliable measure of center. When the data is symmetric, so when it's nice and even on each side, then the mean is the best representation of the data. So there's three main shapes that we're going to see in our data sets. The first one, you could see it's nice and balanced on each side, and it kind of meets in the middle at a peak. We would call that symmetrical. Then you'll have some data sets where most of the dots are stacked up on the left side. And see how I drew an arrow going down to the right? I want you to think of it kind of like you're skiing down a mountain. So you're skiing down and to the right. That would be called skewed right. So when all the data points are to the left, that's called skewed right. And if you have it the other way, when all the data points are skewed to the right, or all the dots are kind of pushed to the right, that would be called skewed left. So you could draw an arrow going down. Again, think of it like you're skiing down a mountain to the left. And when you're looking at data sets, they're not always going to be perfect, like perfectly symmetrical or perfectly skewed right or skewed left. Sometimes they'll be kind of a little, a little bit off. So when you look at a data set, you kind of just want to decide, is it generally symmetrical or generally skewed one way? It doesn't have to be perfect because data is unpredictable. It's not usually going to be perfect. All right, let's test out this example. We're going to practice finding the mean, median, mode, and range. It says a group of ecologists sampled the green iguana population and recorded the length of each iguana. The data is displayed in the dot plot below. All right, you can see I gave you a couple of big hints here from my writing on the dot plot. But I want you to pause this video for a few minutes and see if you can find the mean, median, mode, and range. If you forget how to find any of these, you can flip back to your measures of center or measures of variability notes. All right, if you're ready to check it, let's start with the mean. So remember, mean is just another word for average. That's where you add up all the numbers and you divide by how many there are. I would recommend listing out the data set because we have 12, 13, 14, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. So it'd probably be easier to just write it all out, see the numbers you got, add them up, and you would divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you should get 15.6 for your mean. Which that makes sense. If you look at the data, it's pretty symmetrical, it's pretty balanced, and 15.6 kind of looks like near the middle. All right, the median, that's where we find the exact middle of the data set. So if you listed all the numbers out, you would just cross them off until you find the middle. Or what I did is I just crossed off the dots to narrow it down to the middle. And you can see I circled 16. That was my median. All right, the mode, that is the number that shows up the most often. It's easy on a dot plot because you can just see which one has the tallest stack of dots. So you can see it's a tie between 14 and 16. And the range, I gave you a hint on there showing you it's from the minimum to the maximum. So you would just subtract. 19 minus 12 is 7. So all of those iguanas are within a 7-inch range. All right, so next on the agenda, you guys are going to go open up the slides. Again, I will post the answer key on the stream page so you can check them when you're done. And then grab a homework and you can get started on that. Also, quick note for 7th period. I know yesterday you guys might have only had like 10 or so minutes of class. So I'm just going to assume you did not accomplish anything. So we will do a little recap of the box plots lesson when I get back. If you did attempt the homework, then that's great. If not, don't worry about it. There is the lesson videos posted on the agenda, so that would probably be a good idea for you guys to go back and watch those. But I will do a little mini lesson and we'll fill in the notes when I get back. All right, I expect everybody to be on their best behavior. I heard it was a little bit loud in some of my classes the past couple days. So I need you guys to lock in, get your work done, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.